Thank you, Professor Wilson. Just a moment. Let me share my screen. Okay, is my screen visible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. The name of our project is Designing for Curiosity, and on that, my design focus was to initiate a sense of wonder and curiosity with the help of cooperation amongst the preschool children, children who are aged 3 to 7, and while they are being fully autonomous from the adults, not something that adults would initiate and they would cooperate, nothing like that. They would cooperate between themselves. So that was the basic design idea of the project. But how do I get on with it? So the process was very important on this project. At the first, we had to initiate the design by establishing a scale to measure the environment. And that was really interesting because usually we do something like intuitive and then we do what we feel is good. But in this case, reliability and validity was really important. So on that note, we went through acres. Acres is basically a very established part of environment and as well as overall children measurement scale. Preschool is an important part of it, and poems. And then we there, if you want, I can talk about them a bit, but I don't think that's necessary. But still, acres is mostly something that requires a lot of training, and poems is something that requires less training but a bit straightforward. So we had to merge them kind of together and scrutinize them really well to get what we need. And then with that, we came up with several questions from each of their different sections that would measure the overall environmental scale. And with that, we measured our existing site of CDRC. And after measuring the site, we found out that the overall rating came out something like this. And by the way, by rating, we mean the less it's worse and the more it's better. So you can see from different types of rating that the physical environment part was kind of 60, in between 70 and 60, and the features part was somewhat between 50 and 60 by different users. We used it with different researchers and so on. And due to the lack of users at this time, due to COVID situation, we could not measure the interaction domains. So that part was left blank, and we had to do it the traditional way, and the speculative way mostly. So the way our design skill worked was it gives us a direction of what is missing from the existing. So with that, we can see that I could go into more detail, but due to shortage of time, I'm just saying the key points that math or number learning, science talking, observation and events for science learning, interaction with adults, space for mess and noise, which is very important if you think about it, shade for everyone, proper zoning, space for art and drama and water play, etc. missing from the existing site. So these had to be incorporated in the existing, as well as it had to be made really interesting, because I recently watched a TED talk where the speaker says that the usual children spends less time than a prisoner outside, and simply because it's boring. And with that, we can see that I'm very sorry to say the existing site is actually representing that fact. There is nothing to do. There are some things to do, but if you think about it, this vast zone is quite uninteresting. Apart from biking around the area and sand play, almost all the part for that are dedicated for the preschoolers are actually not interesting. So we had to make it interesting along the way. So the major decision on that was at first we had to make some major zoning decisions. So the zoning was made something like this. At the entrance, we had to introduce nature. because nature is something that would keep them interesting. It's forever changing, and the children would come and see and get engaged, and then after that they can go around if they are interested. So growth of interest was really important. And after that, education was the zone of education was there, but sorry, my mouse pointer was on the other screen. So the zone of education was there, but it's nothing like traditional education, more like an outdoor learning environment. And from there, we can go into two different ways, play or challenge. Basically, both of them are play, but one of them requires physical challenge and the other one is more enjoyable, in my eyes at least. So at initial stage, I tried to do the zoning this way. This was interesting, but it could not provide the regulation of path that was needed. So after that, I had to go this way and cluster different zones a bit more together. This is basically an iteration of this, but you can see that different zones are clustered together, and the primary path is a bit more wide and the secondary path is lesser, and tertiary is even less so. But the thing is, just before this slide, let's talk about the pathways first. So you can see that the pathways are all looping one with another. So the primary pathway loops the whole site and connects different zones together. And from the primary pathway, the secondary pathway starts and ends. So it's another loop. So all the secondary paths are looped together, and the tertiaries are made later. This is an initial iteration. I'll show the tertiary later on. And if I talk about the zoning, you can see it right here. As I was saying, initially the broader zoning was nature, learning, challenge, and play. And then it came into this. This is the forest. The education part was divided into three parts: sundial, existing. It's an existing sundial, and it's quite interesting. So I kept it there. The central outdoor learning environment, shrubs and vegetables. It's really important to initiate science learning as well, because it basically teaches children about seasonal changes. I'll talk more about it later, but this is an interesting part. I could keep it in tree zone, and I debated for a while if I could keep it in tree zone, but later on I found out that it's more related to educational zone. And then the three play parts, water, sand, and art play, are another zone. And there are gradual challenges, challenge 1, 2, 3. So challenge 1 is very easy. Anyone can do it. So this is for little children. Challenge 2 is a bit more difficult, and challenge 3 is for the explorative type. So from there, you can see there came some details. This is not much detail. So you can, basically I'll show it more later, because I have prepared a journey for all of us. So let's not talk about it. This basically talks about different parts and what contains what. And I have talked about this earlier on. So after that, I tried to make a visualization for myself. And this is what it looked like to me. So the entryway looked like a bit more like a forest entry. The sundial was interactive. The central learning zone was at a time maze, and at a time a stage, and so on. But it even took some more iterations to get into the final stage, and it looks something like this now. It is not final, nothing is final, but I'd like to show a journey and go through each part. So let's stop sharing and share another screen. Sorry. Just a moment. I'll share one more screen, and sorry. Yeah. Can you see the screen again? Hello.
Yes, we're seeing the same, like the master plan.
Yes. So okay. From here, let's go and talk about the journey. So this is the entry. And in my thought, the entry should be something like this. The existing entry is really just a low height gate and such. But if I could give the entrance a bit more height and keep some cross vines in it, it would be more interesting. And then the forest zone, it's really important because it really initiates the journey. So here I have kept it trees. I actually calculated the distance of the trees, distance of the pine trees that could be here, and what types of activity could be here. So initially, the most important activity that can take place in the forest zone is natural construction. And this is an activity that goes with my concept, that is collaboration. And children, this is interesting, as well as it requires children to work together. This is not easy. So even though it's a tough experience, they enjoy it and do it together because it's play. And there would be some loose parts as well, such as fallen logs and such. And this would show another form of collaboration, as any children would like to work on this. And it's a risk-taking of a sort, but at first, whoever does this becomes the leader and the other ones follows, and it's in the nature of the children. So this is at the same time teaches children leadership as well as risk-taking, and also teaches how not to fall down again. And it also talks about installation of different types and so on. And then comes the types of paths. So the entrance is from a forest, but the overall experience should be something more. So after the forest, there comes the colorful pavements that I've designed, but they're not only pavement, they are something that can change and morph. They can turn into sittings, they can turn into beds, they can turn into tables and so on. This is just one simple visualization, one possibility, but there are many more possibilities. And the basic material for them is pigmented concrete, but that can change time to time. That can be DEG, that can be HPL and so on. And then comes the secondary pathway. This is not really a defined pathway, although I have shown some lines and sort, but this is not something defined. You can see from the sketch that it can be a bit more hidden, a bit more explorative in nature. And in between primary and secondary pathways, there can be these types of burrows. And burrows can vary. This is just one grass mound type of burrow, but it can also be a form of willow shades and so on. So if the children go there, they can feel the cave, and fantasy play can take place in these types of places. Also, if there is not enough height, there can only be one simple pipe, and it can go to the sand play area. Definitely the sand play area needs some sort of wall to stop the sand traveling from other places. So with some basic treatment, we can install this really easy. So these types of burrows can be somewhere between, this should be in the junctional places. This should be from, this can be something like the children to go and hide, go and take a break from their classes. They can be naughty. We should basically encourage them to be naughty. There is nothing to be disciplined all the time. So they can just get away from their class and go from one place to another with this. So these zones can be that type of burrows and so on, and also this. So after that, let's talk about the teaching or learning. So this is the existing sandal. I have converted this one into basic painted maze. So here there could be stone and such. This is just one painted element. Anyone can come over here, but it initiates a play because there are lines over here, and children love to follow the lines and try to solve the maze and so on. So it looks something like this in my mind. And then there is the existing large tree, and I have made this one the central learning zone, and it looks something like this in my mind. And this zone is really important, as I have said in my first attempt. Sorry. As I have said in my first statement, that I was really confused about this zone and where to put it. But in my studies, I have found that vegetables and perennial and annual trees can teach children a lot about science. Vegetables can teach children cooking, that is an active form of science learning, and also perennial or annual plants can give children a sense of seasonal changes. Also, human-sized shrubs or shrubs basically give children hiding places. So hide and seek can take place over here and so on. And you can see the tertiary pathways can overlap over here. And after that, there comes the play areas. This is the water play area, and it looks something like this in my mind. And basically, this is taken from a book, Splish Splash Splosh. This is fun. The book literally wrote it down there, and this is actually fun. But I know there are certain regulations regarding water play areas, but you can see from this sketch, the water really doesn't reach the height a children needs to get submerged. So I think this is okay. With some basic treatment, we can do it. And also, if there is one deck over there, so various type of nature observation can take place over here, because aquatic life is really interesting and children can observe them up close from these types of zone. And you just saw a continuous bridge, and this bridge looks something like this. And these can also be part of loose part play. Children can install, I don't know if this is possible or not, but there is a possibility, and this is an open-ended design, so they can do whatever they like. And also the dynamic nature of water can form ice or snow, anything. So ice would be good for ice skating, and if there is snow, children can basically measure the snow and talk about numbers and such. And adjacent to the water play area, there is sand play area, and after that there is a mud play area. And after experiencing these types of play areas, they of course would get dirty, and there would be some basic faucets installed near the play areas where they can basically wash themselves. This would also teach them responsibility, and also teach them how to get clean, and they can in the meantime talk about disease and so on. And disadvantages of being dirty. That would also encourage them about science learning or medical sciences. And after that, the last part is challenge zones. So there are 3 challenge zones. This is challenge zone 1. This is basically a grass mound. This would give children a feel of nature. They can lie over there or try to climb up. This is very easy challenge. So this is basically done in another form of nature engagement to basically talk about prairies. And after that, the challenge is zone 2. It is basically these types of ladders and climbing zones. And this is the challenge zone 3. This is the rope climbing zone. So this is the basic journey of the overall experience. So I need to stop my screen sharing once again and go back to PowerPoint. And just a second. Okay. Just a second. Okay, so in the end, after this design, I ran the Qualtrics once again, and these results came up. So one was around 85 and another was 90. The physical environment was 85. I could not fill up all the requirements that were needed to get a perfect score, but the features were almost there. And this is a very speculative type of behavior mapping, but in different times, say at the class time or outdoor learning time, the basic density would be somewhere in these zones. At the play or engagement time, the density would change over this zone. And at the exploration time or nature learning time, the density would go over here. So the basic problem I was talking about, that the overall place is boring, that is not the problem anymore, because the densities can shift over time and the activities can be interesting. So At the end, I can say that most of the approaches that are taken here are done in a manner so that children have to immerse in a cooperative activity to enjoy the fullest and getting a shared sense of curiosity while doing so. And we are trying to find a way to master the future. Thanks.
Okay, you set a new world record. It's almost 20 minutes, but I keep saying that it needs to be in your practice to try to finish within time. Now I'd like to invite Jared and Catherine for comments. Thank you.
Jared, I was trying not to cut Jared off here. Okay, so really great job. I really enjoyed a few things about your presentation. First, I enjoyed that all of your people are in motion, even like this person swinging on their stomach. That's something my children would do all the time. And just being aware and okay with the fact that designs can evolve over time, or they need to have choices or options, not some, just because you drew it on the page doesn't mean it's set in stone. So I really appreciate that about your presentation and your ideas. Actually, talking about specifics of the design, the detail, I love the color pathway. I don't know how feasible it is or what kind of cost it would incur. My one question is, it tends to extend up near the edge on the top part behind the forest, and I'm not sure that that's necessary if you actually need that piece of pathway, if it's actually contributing to anything or if it's just kind of shrinking the forest area. So I might consider the pathway that goes up on the north edge there. I really love all the movable pieces, and like you said, it's collaboration. So the fact that they can work together to create or build or design something. If I have a plan for my children and they have to play with it in a certain way, they'll always take it apart and do it a different way than I expect them to. So planning ahead to allow them to do that is really great. I'm not sure what is the white? It looks like a track along the bottom. Is it an overhead structure?
Yes, this is a bridge. Let me show you one image.
Sorry if I missed that, if you had talked about it, so they can walk on that.
This looks something like this.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking it was just a shade structure, and then I had some concern about if it's shading the right part, because you want to make sure you place it so that the shade is actually being projected onto the play spaces. Because it would be going north of like the earth space. So just thinking about if you can use that as a dual purpose for shade and for the walkway, I think that would be really beneficial. But I think you have some really great ideas. And I'll pass that on to Jared.
Thank you.
Yeah, so there are a lot of things I really like about this. I really appreciated the communication pieces you included as an initial exploration of some of the concepts that developed into the final idea. Like Catherine said, I really like this idea of the colorful materiality, and questions of feasibility aside. I think that some of the earlier concepts maybe explored this color in a more interesting or dynamic way than where we ended up. Even though there's a lot of variety in the striping, my concern is that because it is so regular, that the experience moving along that path could become monotonous in its variety. And I wonder if varying the orientation of the striping, or providing some type of gradient of the width of those individual bands could provide some variance along that path as well. I do like how the different hierarchies of paths that you developed do have their own materiality that helps kind of signal different intensities of use. The kind of secondary paths with the kind of flagstone. And then one of the things I like most about this is the inclusion of designed path networks within the planted material that you've communicated as these informal but intentional ways for the children to interact with these planted spaces in some really just kind of organic and incidental kind of ways. I also think that your presentation method was pretty effective in the combination of the moving to the Prezi format, where you showed us the plan and then kind of switched back to some of the sketches in real time. I thought that worked pretty well. And overall, I think this is probably just one of the more developed ideas we've seen so far today, and just because I'm a plant lover, I think the use of plant material in this project is really successful, and maybe just a bit more developed than some of the others we've seen to this point. And so I really appreciate, even though maybe specific materials aren't shown, just the way it's been communicated, and differences in density and texture, I think creates a really unique experience that creates a nice blend between this really kind of graphic implementation of the paving material and then this really kind of naturalized organic plant space. So nice work.
Thank you.